Hey, this is the World Advice Channel. What I want to talk about today is what people get wrong about capitalism, which is a common, massive misconception about capitalism that people get across all the time. And through explaining this massive misconception about capitalism, I hope to enlighten people and let people know the truth about capitalism and why, as a result, it's not this evil, terrible system that a lot of people make it out to be. So, anyway, let's get started. So when it comes to capitalism, when it comes to the idea of capitalism, what people tend to get wrong, which is the biggest major myth about capitalism, the economic system the free world lives under, is simply the truth of the matter is this idea that capitalism is is as a whole as a system is fundamentally flawed. Now, when it comes to this particular idea, it also comes down to this idea that it's human nature. We're pre-programmed and designed to automatically by nature be greedy and so on and so forth. Yada, 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 the same type of stuff you hear all the time. Humans were just simply by nature pre-designed to be greedy and this and that. So as a result, capitalism could never really work, because we're just naturally going to be greedy and want more and more and more and have people as a result who are greedy in positions of power who end up as a result, taking money from, taking more money than they need and so on and so forth, which in of itself is a bit massive misconception about capitalism. Now, let's get started as to the reason why this is a massive misconception, and it's not only a misconception, but a massive fallacy when it comes to the idea of capitalism. Now, the reason why it's like that is that capitalism as a whole is simply a fundamental system that just simply encourages people to do their best as a whole, and not even that. It's just as a whole, capitalism is all it is a fundamental system that's designed that is based on the principles of generating as much money as possible in order for a nation to fundamentally grow as much as it possibly can. Okay, that's all capitalism is as a whole. It's just simply an economic system that is based on trade to encourage a nation to grow and flourish with as much by generating as much profits as possible, and so on and so forth. That's all capitalism really is. There's different elements to it, but mainly that's all it's just simply an economic system for growth. Okay. And when it comes to this idea that capitalism as a whole is evil and this and that, it's always designed to fail because it's human nature, tends to get past the fact that those are down to technicalities. Technicalities, when it comes to how things are done, have nothing to do with a fundamental idea or a system for how things are done. Just like, for example, when it comes to this idea that, human beings are inherently greedy by nature and this and that and yada, 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 and we're automatically always going to give a temptation, and that's why nations always become corrupt and so on and so forth. The truth of the matter is there are clearly ways you can prevent that through anti-corruption measures. And through these anti-corruption measures, you could literally, as a result, literally prevent that stuff from happening by simply making sure you can do things like regulate the stock market, or have good measures to monitor politicians, for example, to make sure that when you take money, they are being monitored to make sure that they clearly do not overspend the things. But the thing is, one of the reasons why America is so corrupt is a lot of those anti-corruption measures are absolute shit. They don't do a good job. And a lot of them not only do a lot of the people, is it not really well planned out? A lot of the politicians have actually encouraged there to be less regulation, just like for Ronald Reagan during the 1980s, encouraged there to be less regulation on things like the stock market, which just pretty much has made it easier for people to just screw people over. And as you later saw in the 2000s, particularly through the 2008 financial crisis, which just created a crisis that affected everyone's life. So that's what I'm trying to say here. Besides, even when you look at other nations during the 2008 financial crisis, aside from America, like Canada and Britain, and other nations for that matter, they're capitalist, but they were not affected as harshly, anywhere near as harshly as America was. They were still affected, but they were not affected as harshly as America was. So they're capitalist nations. So why did that happen as well? Because they simply had better regulations. So that's what I'm trying to say here, for that matter. Not everything is just based on, oh, well, it just simply comes down to the fact of the matter that capitalism is evil. Humans by nature are greedy. That we can't control everything, man. It's all about the everyday people, man. Let's just live down to earth and live on earth and fuck the system, man. Like all that type of crap you hear from people. No, none of that stuff is true. It has nothing to do with that. It's simply just down to the fact of how things are technically done. For that matter. It comes down to technical rules of how things are done. And even aside from corruption, which is a major issue in capitalist nations, another thing can also just simply come down to, as well, just simply, aside from corruption, the corruption issue, that's such a massive issue in these types of nations, it also comes down to the fact that for capitalism, it just also just sometimes just come down to the competency of politicians and their policies, for that matter, in all honesty. So that's exactly what I'm trying to get across here. This whole idea that it's always capitalism, it's the idea of capitalism. No, it's not the idea of capitalism. It's how it is properly done as a whole. Okay? It's simply just that, okay, for that matter. And that's the biggest misconception of people tend to get about capitalism. It's not a system that is evil. Unlike communism, that actually encourages socialism, that actually encourages the government to clamp down on people's right to freedom of speech, which is already a massive freaking red flag, as a whole, for that matter. A major red flag. For that matter, and a lot of things communism does that kind of screws up a nation, for that matter, and the fact that it tends to kind of rely on a basic principle that's not really been tried before, while capitalism, in literally how you look at it, is really been used for thousands of years. Maybe not in our modern definition, but for thousands of years, the idea of capitalism in some way has been used. So at least we can kind of test it out and know from experience. There's a lot of things we know from experience for capitalism. Communism is an idea that's only existed for like 100-something years, and it relies on a lot of theories that we don't know if it really works, and just ends up screwing things up and making things more complicated than it needs to be, such as these ideas of, oh, well, when it comes to measuring things, we measure it based on its value when it comes to things versus simply down to what you personally believe. So just, for example, we'll say obviously things like, okay, because this, like, for example, we'll say something like a tractor should be worth more money than something like jewelry, because a tractor can actually help people, and feed people, while jewelry is just there to just look good. That just overcomplicates things and just kind of screws things up, and just kind of cause a lot of problems instead of just being simple and straight to the point, like capitalism simply is. The principle of capitalism is. So it also complicates things and screws things up. So that's the truth of the matter, and that's why capitalism is not only is a better system. That's why it's a better system. All that you need to do for capitalism is just make sure you know how to do things technically. Okay, for that matter. If you can do that well, then guess what? You do not have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about anything collapsing. It's just down to just simply how well it's done. So anyway, this is my video. I hope it enlightened people. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, this is all I have to say. So what I have to say alongside that is that if you like this video and like videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button And that is all I have to say, and simply put it, later.